This is the 10 Eyewitness News with Juanita Phillips.
Good evening. With the coalition still reeling over their boil-over election loss, John Hewson says he wants another shot at Labor. The coalition leadership is automatically vacant after an election defeat, but John Hewson says he'll ditch the GST and will renominate as leader.
There weren't as many as a victory would have attracted, but his supporters gave John Hewson a hero's welcome. And from the failed leader, the nearest thing to a concession.
But you'd have to say the probabilities are that the government will win.
By the end of the night's counting, Labor had won 70 seats. The coalition 57, with 17 still doubtful. The result put immediate pressure on John Hewson's leadership. Last night, he wasn't sounding like a quitter.
We are going to continue to fight.
Senior Liberals like Robert Hill and Andrew Peacock began urging Dr Hewson to stay on as leader.
There's a lot of politics left in John Hewson. I still think he can become a very great Australian Prime Minister.
One scenario has Bronwyn Bishop resigning the Senate and standing in a by-election for Hewson's seat of Wentworth. She has already ditched the goods and services tax. Co-architect of the tax, Peter Reith, is less hasty. He needs more time to assess his prospects. Then there's always John Howard. Today, he wasn't committing himself. Late afternoon, John Hewson emerged from his huddle and firstly congratulated the government on its win and his explanation for the boil-over. Paul Keating had convinced Australians they'd be worse off under the coalition. But Dr Hewson wants another shot at it.
I will again nominate as leader of the Liberal Party, and I expect good support for that nomination.
And he accepts the verdict of the people on the goods and services tax.
And in those circumstances, the people of Australia have spoken on the GST. They don't want it, and so it'll go.
Although John O10, Eyewitness News.
Meanwhile, the Keating team is planning a rapid return to full control. Just hours after the result was known, the machinery to resume power swung into action. But the Prime Minister spent last night savouring his unexpected win to the fullest.
Like a screen hero, Paul Keating made a dramatic entrance after a dramatic victory.
Well, this is the sweetest victory of all.
Most pundits, including the press and even some of his own staff, doubted he'd win, so he congratulated those who kept the faith.
This is a victory for the true believers.
The adulation for the Prime Minister was near deafening, but he promised that the government would not exploit its victory. After private celebrations in Bankstown, the Prime Minister left for a night on the town with friends and staff, partying on at this King's Cross restaurant to about 4 in the morning. After a very late sleep-in, the Prime Minister has been on the phone here at Kirribilli House conferring with departmental officials in Canberra about his transition back to government and the swearing-in of his new ministry. But as to who will be in that cabinet, the Prime Minister says he has not yet considered all the options. The Keating family spent a quiet day after the election, apart from a brief media invasion. But it'll be back to business in the morning, with the Prime Minister scheduled to fly back to Canberra and, he says, tackle his #1 priority of unemployment. Paul Smith, 10 Eyewitness News.
And coming up straight after this bulletin on Meet the Press, Labor Senator Stephen Loosley with his predictions for the election wash-up. To sports news, and the third and deciding test in Auckland is heading for a heart-stopping finish.
At stumps, Australia was 6 for 226, an overall lead of 141. In a controversial day, wicketkeeper Ian Healy was given out caught behind when replay showed the ball struck his arm. Captain Alan Border was furious. In the rugby league match of the day, Newcastle suffered a rare loss at home, going down 20-10 to Easts. In the other results, the Broncos outclassed Cronulla, Penrith were humbled by Parramatta, Souths failed to score against Illawarra, Norths beat Manly, while West toppled the Gold Coast last night. And finally, the Socceroos are into the semi-finals of the World Youth Cup after a magnificent 2-1 victory over Uruguay last night. Mark Simmons, 10 Eyewitness News.
Time now for a look at tomorrow's weather, and around the nation's capitals, showers in Brisbane and Hobart, fine in Melbourne, Perth and Adelaide, mainly fine in Sydney. That's 10 Eyewitness News to the moment. Our next bulletin tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I'm Juanita Phillips. Good night.